Excellent. Good morning. My name is Riley Temple, and I'm the curator of the African American Episcopal Historical Collection at the Virginia Theological Seminary in Alexandria, Virginia. We have with us the eminent Mr. Christopher Allen Graham, who has written a most wonderful history of more than a history, really, a story, series of stories about St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Richmond, Virginia, which is my home. St. Paul's was at some point in its history deemed the Cathedral of the Confederacy. And in light of recent activity in and among Episcopal churches to build a beloved community based upon its history and its desire to racially reconcile with its old history, St. Paul's Episcopal Church and Christopher Allen Graham collaborated to produce this history and this study. Other parishes all over the country are doing the same thing, not quite with the scholarly heft of St. Paul's. So, Christopher, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for talking to me.
Can you tell me where you live?
I currently live in Richmond, Virginia,
Mhm.
in the um, East End, in an area that I don't know what it's traditionally called, but I think we're calling it Churchill North,
It's Churchill. Mhm.
right? Want to distinguish between this part of Churchill and the Churchill that everyone knows, which
And what is the Churchill everybody knows?
along Broad Street, um, Chimborazo Park,
Yeah,
St. John's Church.
yeah.
It's
That is
I'm
the
from,
site of my home, my family home,
oh, okay. What street?
Grace Street.
Oh, okay.
On Grace Street, facing south,
Okay.
there are two between Chimborazo Park
Mm-hmm.
and 31st Street.
Mm.
There are two
Okay.
brick homes. One of them was a house that my parents bought in 1957, and we lived in until it was sold in 1997.
Mm. Okay.
And so you're right in my neighborhood.
Okay. I'm up on Q Street.
Oh, near George Mason?
Beyond that, up closer to 9 Mile.
Oh, so you're close to Armstrong, or what was Armstrong?
Uh, I'm on south of 9 Mile. Let's see. What's the I don't know how well you recognize landmarks in the neighborhood now, but if I go out on my front porch and look left, I can
Yeah.
see Fourth Baptist Church.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and if I look right, I can see Ocean Grocery and the police department.
Fourth
So,
Baptist Church has a building attached to it, and it is the education building that was designed
mm,
by Virginia's first woman architect,
yep. Ethel Fern?
Bailey Furman.
Okay.
I knew her well.
Okay.
We called her Miss Peachy.
That's right.
She had a granddaughter,
Hmm.
Alwyn Furman, who was my date for the Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority Cinderella Ball
Hmm.
in 1965.
Wow.
Alwyn is now a member up here in Washington, D.C. at Alfred Street Baptist Church. Her
Okay.
last name now is Burke. Her father died not long ago, Livingston Furman.
Right.
Ethel Bailey Furman's papers are housed at the Library of Virginia.
Hmm.
She designed that building.
Yep. And
And
there,
I used to walk from Gray Street down there toward the river, Chimborazo Park,
hmm
31st Street, and pass her house. Also past the place that was Doug Wilder's first office
Oh, okay. All right.
at P Street.
Okay.
Um,
Grace, P and Grace.
hmm, no, I can't remember, but it's
No, that's okay.
31st Street. But he grew up across from Fourth Baptist. So from our home then on 24th Street, we would walk to George Mason Elementary School.
Hmm.
And my mother would say to us, whatever you do, don't walk by Beulah Wilder's house because she will talk your head off and make you late for school. And of course, I did precisely what she told me not to do. And I always got the latest news from Beulah Wilder, who is
Right.
Doug Wilder's mother.
Right on.
Anyway, but that's some of our history.
Yeah. I'm gonna when this is over, I don't need to pull. I could talk about this all day. I don't need to pull focus here, but for what we're here to do. But I'm gonna send you a link to a 20-minute film that was made in 1970
Hmm.
by a documentarian, and it's just raw footage. And he started out downtown, but he spent most of his time in Churchill along M Street,
Yeah.
uh, filming some protest of some local corner shops
Oh,
by what I think is an organization called the Welfare Rights Organization.
wow.
And just a lot of wonderful street scenes from Churchill in 1970.
Wow.
And
Very different from what it is today.
very much so.
And that
Um,
had, it was just after 1968, it had survived the riots,
mhm,
what was left.
right.
Um,
Anyways,
what's your connection to Richmond?
um, I came here for a job in 2016.
Hmm.
I was hired as a what's the right word for it? Visiting curator, temporary curator, at the American Civil War Museum.
Uh-huh.
And I had been living in North Carolina.
Where?
Uh, at the time, Hendersonville.
Hendersonville. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I got this job. It was just a matter of getting a job and moving here,
And about what year was that, Chris?
2016.
You said that, 2016. I need to
Right.
listen closely, don't I? Um, and were you trained as an historian?
Yeah. I did. I earned history degrees all throughout graduate school. Um, did a public history master's in 1999
Hmm.
at NC State University,
Hmm.
and then completed my PhD in history at University of North Carolina at Greensboro in 2013.
UNCG.
Yep.
Um, and were you writing while you were doing that beyond what you were doing for your degree?
No, not really.
Okay. Were you an Episcopalian?
Um, I was born and raised a Roman Catholic.
Hmm.
Let that lapse. But when um, I met up with Miriam, who's now my wife, uh, she had just she had grown up Methodist, and she had just become a member of the Episcopal Church in Hendersonville,
I see.
St. James in Hendersonville.
Hmm.
And since I was interested in being with her. Uh, and it kind of hit me at a good time in my life to kind of re-explore some religion and faith in my own life. I joined her and got accept um, the cooperative agreement. Catholics, we don't have to be baptized as Episcopalians. They just accept you
Hmm.
in a baptismal like ceremony. So that happened in 2014.
Hmm.
So it hasn't been long that I've been a member of the church, but yeah.
I think it's when you are baptized, as you undoubtedly were as a Catholic, in the name of the
Mhm.
Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. It's good for all. You're
It
rust
covers.
proof. And how do you find the Episcopal Church? How did you find it to be for you, and how do you find it today?
Um, I oh man, that's a great question because um I'm not a very good I'm not a very tr good I, I don't want to place any kind of judgment, but I'm kind of a shallow Christian. Um,
Meaning,
meaning I don't think too hard. Well, I take that back. I don't participate as much as I need to. I don't think as much as I need to. But the thing I like about the Episcopal Church, and this kind of gets back to the kind of getting accepted into it, is reviewing the baptismal vows.
yes.
And um, and I remember reciting the baptismal vows in the acceptance. I don't know what the rite is called, but
Hmm.
when I was accepted in and reading that out loud,
Hmm.
something struck me about
Confirmation.
that.
Hmm.
Yeah, okay. Something
Hmm.
struck me about the words of the baptismal vows that really not much else um, has impacted me in terms of what is it that gives me a moral center and what is it that kind of helps me establish some moral non-negotiables in my life.
Hmm.
And I like the Episcopal Church because man, for some reason, I don't know if it's just St. Paul's or the Episcopal Church at large, but we're constantly talking about those baptismal vows.
Well, when
Oh.
there's a baptism, it is not a ritual that's off in a corner someplace on a Saturday morning. It's the morning service.
Hmm.
Yeah, we take it
Um,
very seriously.
yeah. In general, the Episcopal Church works for me because I'm I'm a historian, not a theologian. I don't really do theology that well, but I understand things from a historical perspective, and uh, this church uh, really, I'm sure others are very good at it too, but this church really kind of accepts the fact and accepts me, even if I come in thinking about kind of my faith and religion and morality and where we are and how to think about Jesus and whatnot. I do that in a historical perspective, and the Episcopal Church lets me do that and loves me just the same. And
Let me try something out on you.
okay.
Um, Sometimes I think what we say to one another as Episcopalians is that we don't agree and we don't ask everybody to agree on doctrine.
Yeah.
But so your theology can be whatever you bring to the table, but what we do believe in and what we do require is that you come together. We come together for a common meal,
hmm
however you see it.
Right. Okay.
When you moved to Richmond, um, to work at the Civil War Museum, did you join St. Paul's right away?
Yeah, and there's a backstory on that.
Hmm.
So,
What's that?
okay, I just remember the right term. I was a guest curator um, at the Civil War Museum.
Hmm.
Anyways, uh, about 4 months before I got the job, um, kind of word got out on the blogosphere, I guess what we called the blogosphere at the time, that St. Paul's was considering um, thinking about its memorials that are in the sanctuary and thinking about possibly removing them. And that's how the news got out. And as a public historian and as a public historian who has a background in the American Civil War and the memory of the war, and that's my um, my academic field wasn't Civil War, but it was still 19th century, and you can't do what I do and not be unaware of what what the commemorative landscape, what's happening on the commemorative landscape.
Yeah.
And so when St. Paul's that had, from the outside was known as kind of a tourist stop on the Civil War Trail,
Hmm.
not the official Civil War Trail in Richmond, but it's people who toured Civil War stuff, like me, had probably been to St. Paul's in the past, and I'd been there, I don't know, probably like 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyways, so there was a very good historian who wrote a blog post on the, I think the National Council on Public History's History at Work blog, um, saying that uh, St. Paul's was whitewashing its history by by the possibility of removing plaques and windows and whatnot. And um, and so I responded with a blog post of my own um, that said St. Paul's can do whatever it wants to do with its sanctuary. And it's not for historians like us to say that you can't be a living church and and whatnot. And this that got a lot of attention, and there was a lot of discussion, um, particularly on Kevin Levin's Civil War Memory blog.
Hmm.
And as it happened, there was someone at St. Paul's who um, who was paying attention to these online discussions, and that was Beth O'Leary.
Oh, yeah.
And she reached out to me and said, um, "Hey, thank you for sticking up for St. Paul's. We're not whitewashing history here. This is really what we're wanting to do." And she just kind of reached out to me, and we started talking. And and when I passed through Richmond one time, I stopped by and visited Beth. She was a curator at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts at the time. She's retired now.
Hmm.
She showed me around the museum
Hmm.
and whatnot. And then a couple months later, just completely unrelated, I got the job at the American Civil War Museum, and I contacted Beth and said, "Hey, guess what? I'm moving to Richmond." And she said, "Oh, you must come here and you must be involved in this process." So,
So it was already underway.
yeah, yeah, they were about 6 to 8 months into it by the time I came on board.
And what does that mean? And by the way, thank you for introducing me to Beth O'Leary.
Okay.
I have to talk to her after the 20th of August.
Oh, good.
Um, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay.
What were they doing at the time?
Well, so the process started. Okay. The um so the process started, I think, the week, I'm trying to get my timing right. The week after the murders in Charleston, South Carolina.
Dylan Roof, yes. Hmm.
Yep. And um and
People
the
started
record,
talking about Monument Avenue.
I'm sorry.
and people started talking about Monument Avenue.
Well, there's been a different conversation in Richmond about Monument
Well,
Avenue.
let's not go there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. The rector at the time, Wallace Adams Riley, gave a sermon that uh, said, "Hey, what does it mean for us as a welcoming church to have all this Confederate stuff in our sanctuary? What does it say to Black people who might be interested in coming here, or anyone else who might be interested in coming here, might be put off by these memorial windows, these plaques with Confederate flags on them and whatnot?" And and so in his sermon, he called for the vestry to set up a program or an initiative or an ad hoc committee to study this problem. And they they got smart. The vestry got smart about it. They hired a facilitator and I can't remember the facilitator's name company. They're out of DC, and I'd know it if I heard it.
Mm,
I apologize. Um, they uh, they came in and um, facilitated 3 to 5 uh, open discussions in the parish hall to try to get people to think about, um, what's the general consensus amongst the congregation uh, about what to happen here, what needs to happen here regarding these things. Okay. And they set up an ad hoc committee, which at the time was called History and Reconciliation Initiative,
hmm
and um, created an agenda that would have some outcomes by within, I think it was 5 years at the time, uh, coming up to the 175th anniversary of the church in the year 2020, to produce reports on the history, um, to produce new tours of the site because it's a historic church. We give historic tours, um, and to produce recommendations for the disposition of the monuments and memorials, and to create appropriate music and liturgies of repentance. Um, and so the ad hoc committee, the HRI, had was set up with an executive, a steering committee, and then 3 subcommittees that were devoted to music and liturgy,
hmm
disposition of the monuments, and doing the historic research for reports.
Okay, a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Um,
And I'll tell you where I landed in the middle of that when,
okay. But before you do that,
yeah.
what you talk of your book mentions a great deal or explores a great deal about um, what the iconography were, for want of a
Mhm.
better term,
Right.
commemorating or honoring the Confederacy, including the kneelers, apparently.
One or two, yeah.
Yeah. Um, what kind of, when those conversations began, tell me about the demographics of the congregation.
Um, it I can't give you exact numbers, um, but
How did it feel?
it felt, considering its context,
Mhm.
um, there were it was slightly more diverse than you might imagine. And what I mean is that I think maybe 5 to 10% of the congregation were African American. Um, and the church had recently had uh, Mark Gordon was a senior warden
Mhm.
during the outset. Um, Joe, oh man, I can't remember Joe's last, Dr. Joe. was a senior warden after all this. Um, Michelle Walker and um, was uh, was deeply involved in the HRI process, um, as well as Lou.
When
And
did okay, go ahead.
sorry. So yeah, it was slightly more diverse than you would imagine,
Hmm.
but not quite as diverse as one might hope for. But
Yeah.
I've come around to I've come around on my thinking about what that means. So we can get back to that later. But
Let's back up for a second. What do you mean by public historian?
oh, that's a disciplinary distinction between academic and public historian. And public historian is a uh, classically trained historian who works in public-facing institutions or medium. And so curators, museum people, historic site people, tour guides, people who write accessible nonfiction,
Hmm.
um, archivists,
Hmm.
park rangers. There's a lot of digital history right now.
Okay.
Um,
And who was the director of the Civil War Museum at the time?
at the time, the director was Christy Coleman.
And this is the African American woman.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And how long had she been there?
She had been, I, I don't get my timing right on this. She was recruited from the Wright Museum of African American History
Yeah,
in Detroit
yeah, yeah,
to come down and be the director of what was then called the American Civil War Center,
yeah.
was a separate museum institution in historic Tredegar in Richmond. Um, in about 2008 or 2009,
Hmm.
I think. She's from Williamsburg,
Hmm.
and so I think just kind of wanted to move closer to home.
Hmm.
And uh, and um, so there were two Civil War museums in Richmond at the time, and in uh, 2013, for a variety of reasons, the American Civil War Center did a corporate merger with the museum that was known as the Museum of the Confederacy, and created the American Civil War Museum, which finished that merger in 2014. So not long before I started there,
Hmm.
and when I came on board, they were planning a move of the collections in the museum of the Museum of the Confederacy down to historic Tredegar, where the Civil War Center was
Yeah,
located,
yeah.
to create a new facility down there, which uh, they ultimately did.
Okay. When she was appointed, it was met with gasps
Hmm.
among us who know Richmond.
Ah.
Um,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, no, no. It's getting off topic. So,
When once you begin the HRI,
hmm.
which I've come to know because you employ it in your book.
Right.
Um, when did you begin to understand that you would be the chronicler? Is that what you see this as?
Um, sort of. There's a couple more um, material reasons why I came around to that. Um, the HRI had been set up, and the subcommittees were beginning to start their work when Beth recruited me to become involved. And so the history research subcommittee hadn't yet started doing anything. Um, Beth was the head of that, and um, there was some behind the scene. I don't know if Beth will talk about this,
Hmm.
um, and I hesitate to bring it up. But my understanding was that the chair of HRI, um, Linda, uh, she and Beth never got along,
I see. Yeah. Yeah.
and I don't know if
Shocking that that could happen in a church, isn't it?
yeah, um, and and so as soon as I came on board, my understanding after the fact was that Linda recruited me to be the chair of the history subcommittee, and Beth was happy to do that because she was already clashing with Linda and was happy to have someone else do it. Now, that's not to say that Beth wasn't involved the whole time. Um, but a critical thing is that Beth and I made a decision very early that we wanted to cover the whole history and not just the slave owning, not just the memorials, but the whole history of the church. And because,
Why did you do that? Was it to set a context?
yeah, to tell a whole story,
Yeah, got it.
because the first thing I figured out is like, wow, there's so much more going on in this place than just the slaveholding and just uh, the memorials.
Yeah.
Um, and also kind of in terms of becoming, as you put it, becoming a chronicler. Um, it's because I am a very unimaginatively trained academic historian. When I think of, and Beth's a little more imaginative than me, but Beth is an academic historian as well. When we think about doing uh, thorough deep dive analyses of it, you automatically envision it as a monograph.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and so that kind of from the historical research part of it was a created tension
I
in
want to get to
HRI.
the tension. I assume that there was tension in the
Yeah,
congregation in the church. Can you
in
talk
different
about
ways,
that?
but
Yeah.
in ways you might not expect.
And what do you mean by that?
Um,
Because this, for example, your story
mhm,
and the story of St. Paul's will serve as a template or as an instruction to other parishes who are about to engage in this kind of work.
okay.
Okay?
Um, I the the te okay. There's a big and little ways to describe the tension that was generated.
Well, let me ask an overarching question first.
Yeah, yeah.
Was it healthy?
Um, I think so.
Okay, go ahead.
Um, and the common question is, were congregants opposed to this altogether, or removing Confederate stuff altogether? Were they opposed to it? As I chronicled in my book, um, by 2015, the Confederate stuff was so in the background that most the church had a different identity,
Uh,
and most people didn't care.
yeah,
And there were some people that I understand got in a huff and withdrew their donations and went over to other Episcopal churches. But if that happened immediately before I got involved, so I
yeah,
never had to deal
yeah,
um, with anyone who was getting on our case about wanting to maintain the memorials or the memory as we'd had it. The two sources of tension, at least where I came, uh, that I encountered was that um, if you're doing deep dive research that, if you know it or not, is going to end up as a monograph, that takes time and people are impatient. And so Beth and I, had a lot of pressure to produce something soon, soon, soon. And why is it taking you 3 to 4 years to do this? Um, and and so we had to kind of schedule some regular talks on here's what we're finding, here's what we're doing, um, and uh, and to try to hold people off because after a while we felt we had too good a um, I don't want to put it that way, too good a story, but we, we had too important a story to tell. It's not something you could write a 12-page executive summary of
Yeah,
slaveholding in the church.
yeah.
Uh,
And you did not produce that for sure.
no. And
So,
that's the other thing is the other point of tension is that we had a number of people um, that were impatient
mhm,
because their opinion was that, hey, we know this church did bad. Why do we have to do a deep dive on this history? Let's start the atonement now.
mm.
Just say it.
Yeah, but you
Just
don't
say
know
it.
they didn't know what the landscape was. But let
Yeah,
me,
yeah.
but you helped to define that. I guess the point that what I hear is that where there was tension, um, you were able to put it into um, to assist in the inquiry, not as a way of stopping you. What was the effect of it? Let me get out of the way. What was
Um,
the effect of the tension on your work?
well, the effect is that I had a lot of long and heated conversations with Linda, and I went back on Prozacs. Um, it I don't know because that's a good question. Um, and I don't want to suggest that it was just me and Beth kind of squirreling ourselves away in the archives
Hmm.
and telling everyone to just wait 5 years.
Hmm.
There were other activities going on uh, under the HRI umbrella,
Hmm.
um, and important conversations, uh, important moments for feedback with the history research group, but also we were organizing tours of other sites that were doing good kind of reparative work. Um,
In and
and
around Richmond or elsewhere?
um, in around Richmond, the one the one I organized was up to James Madison's Montpelier
Oh yeah.
to see that exhibit up there called The Mere Distinction of Color, which was
Hmm.
very good.
They've done a good job there.
Yeah. Um, and and there were ongoing discussions about the fate of the memorials in the sanctuary that were very fruitful for people because those weren't getting too bogged down in the history, but getting more having deeper discussions about how race intersects in has intersected in people's individual lives, and having kind of open and revealing discussions in that way. We did the Sacred Ground program a couple times
Hmm.
for different groups,
Hmm.
and so there was still a lot going on. So if I wasn't producing my 300-page report just yet, there was still an activity that people could engage in and think about kind of all these implications of racial history in the church now.
And so let me just so you and Beth felt the need to provide some feeding while you were working.
Well, that was part of that wasn't a thing that Beth and I did. That was part of the larger HRI initiative that it never was going to be just about what the history report said.
Yeah,
And the history report, when we started out, wasn't defined on what it would be. There was never the idea that there was going to be a book published out of
yeah,
this.
yeah.
I think when they set it up, they were imagining a kind of a, you know, 12-page overview of slaveholding at St. Paul's. And that would be it. And I think that's what frustrated people. And And folks just, um, I'm not being judgmental here, um, and I'm not being bitter here, but it's true. Folks don't understand how much effort it takes to produce an academic style monograph,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
especially when you have two people that are doing it on a volunteer basis
yeah,
outside of day jobs.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and so it took a long it took a long time. And another thing is that I was writing this in a very academic style. And hold on a second. So I was writing this in a very academic style, and I think a lot of people expected something a little more bold and outraged and accessible in the style. And so when people sit, I suspect that uh, not many people have actually thoroughly read this book at the church. I could be wrong, but I would understand because academic histories are not engaging.
But it's the academic histories that last.
Oh, I think so.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. Um,
What what mistake did you make?
um, by kind of sleepwalking into a monograph, into an academic monograph, instead of producing something that was more accessible earlier. And I don't know what that could have been.
Yeah, I don't know what you mean.
Um,
You wanted to tease her? You needed to give them a teaser?
yeah, or less dense and clearer to me writing. And I've grown a lot as a writer over the years.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
teaching you how to write in an academic style and history is just a really great way to make your writing uninteresting. So I had to, I've been kind of intentional about learning how to write um, as if I was writing for a popular magazine like National Geographic
Yeah,
or New Yorker or Atlantic or something like that.
yeah.
Um, in ways that kind of pay more attention to getting people into characters and into stories in a narrative way, and in a punchier writing kind of way. And so, if I could tell the story, that was told in chapter one about slaveholding and pro-slavery Christianity, if I could tell that in a 5-page article that is bracing and engaging, I feel like it would have had a a greater impact.
Well, it's all about the story always.
Yeah.
And uh, I, I want to push back against
I have
you.
another mistake
What? What?
that I want to mention. Excuse me. I don't know if this. I had to justify this a little after the fact. Um, and this is informed by kind of what I know about uh, reparation work and what I know about uh, good public history is that this was a very internal process. And there were
Internal to.
to St. Paul's.
Oh,
Um, and this ended up being about the people at St. Paul's. And what I mean is that um, we early on made some ham-fisted attempts to uh, get folks at uh, First African Baptist and St. Philip's um, as regular participants in some of the programming we were doing around this.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but that didn't work out. And
Now,
um,
why do you think that's so?
um, I think I don't know. I can't say for certain. But there are several reasons. One is that St. Paul's and churches in Richmond have been doing reconciliation work for longer than just HRI.
Yeah.
They were starting that in the late 80s and
Yeah.
throughout the 90s.
Mm,
And every time a majority white church reaches out to a majority black church to engage in some reconciliation issues, um, it comes down to kind of superficial hand-holding things with no real results that come out of it. And I suspect that the black churches that we reached out to were polite and met us for dinner and talked, but didn't really feel like doing this again. Um, because I think the way that I I don't know, I can't speak for their representatives and what they were thinking and why they ended up being kind of disinterested in continuing a participation. I can't speak for that. I'm only speaking for what my perception of it was.
mhm.
Is that, we sat around and had a lot of awkward dinners, and folks in St. Philip's are, just kind of like, uh, so why are we here? Um, and and I kind of retroactively justified this by saying that that this is a project about St. Paul's history, and it's a project about what St. Paul's people did. And we're not in a position to uh, testify or witness or speak to the pain that what people at St. Paul's did to our African American brothers and sisters.
Was that what you were doing, or were you trying to find out?
Wasn't I wasn't Well, as a historical matter, there was a choice to explore that historically, but you know, we were talking a minute ago about how long this is going to take,
Yeah.
um, and realized that if I really wanted to go into that, that would turn it into a 10-year project.
Well,
Um,
let me just say this. I know a little bit about black
ca-
parishes, black churches, but at the time,
right.
First African, of course, has a wonderful history.
Hmm.
It has, and I hope this that I'm not going to insult them by saying First African has never adequately chronicled its own history.
Hmm.
Nor has St. Philip's. It has a
I
recent history that's done by a fellow named Kenneth Anderson, who's come close.
Okay. I have that on my wish list. I'm
What?
I'm looking forward to getting a hold of it, but I'm overwhelmed with day job stuff
Yeah,
again.
yeah, yeah. I have it.
Okay.
It's a little gossipy, but it's all right.
All right. Um, just two other things. In the middle of this, uh, Reverend Phoebe Ralph
Phoebe.
uh,
Mhm. Now,
from
Bishop Phoebe.
yeah became Bishop of Western Tennessee,
Mhm.
and so the St. Philip's folks uh, said they couldn't really engage when they were in the process of a new rector search, and so that was their explanation for why they didn't continue being involved in that, and that makes a lot of sense. But I want to can I want to finish a thought
Go ahead.
is is that um, I didn't want to speak to the Black experience outside of St. Paul's, or excuse me, speak for the Black experience outside of St. Paul's. I didn't feel comfortable doing that. As a historian, I could have historically figured out a way to do that, but considering what we were doing, I didn't want to do that. And also, I'm very compelled by the idea that what was going on here was a matter of the white people figuring out what white people did for the
Yeah,
benefit of white people.
yeah.
And there wasn't really a need, just that story in itself.
Hmm.
Like if you've got an empathetic bone in your body, you're going to know. how this harms other people.
Hmm.
But I didn't need to go victimize First African Baptist congregation again by saying, hey, tell us about the pain that St. Paul's people had caused in your history. I wasn't interested in kind of bringing that into it. But and so I kind of retro justified that into saying this is a this is an analysis of this history uh, of white people by white people for white people to center the harms to center what was the pathology amongst white people, not how it might have created harm or pathologies amongst black people. That's a story that's been well told, and I don't we don't need to repeat that.
And if St. Philip's and First African, for example, want that story told, they have to tell it. And there is no way that you could tell it for them. And there's no way that they can inform you about how it happened or
Right.
what it meant at St. Paul's
Hmm.
or what it means for St. Paul's.
Hmm.
That's an inward search, don't you think?
How do you mean?
Self-examination.
Oh, inward. Yeah. Um, yeah. That was the intention is
Yeah.
that and this gets into kind of what the kind of intending about what the larger outcomes because HRI set an agenda in 2015 of things to be accomplished by 2020, by the 175th anniversary of the church. And over the course of those 5 years, our expectations changed a lot. And we ended up delivering on what was on that original agenda item, but delivering on those original agenda items, new liturgy, music,
Hmm.
historical reports, recommendations on monuments, uh, all contributing to the kind of marking the 170th anniversary in 2020, which actually never happened because of 2020. Um, but but what it got to was bigger questions about, and this was some of the tension I had with a couple of people, is that um, what's the goal of this? Is this for us as a white church to understand white pathologies of racism better so that we can examine ourselves now and be critical of ourselves now, um, which is how I'd imagined it. Other folks said, well, we need to know the damage that this church produced in black communities so we can get a better scope on what kind of reparations work we need to do. Um, and some folks were frankly honest about it. It's like, how big a check do we need to cut?
Oh, um,
And I didn't, I'm not the only one, but I didn't think that was really a great way of kind of thinking through how um, reconciliation or reparations needs to work in this regard. But
it seems to me that when I've seen this kind of study done successfully, and I would say you have done it successfully,
thank you.
it's much less about the damage done as it is about what did happen.
Mm,
What did it look like? Whether it was damaging is a different question. And how it was damaging is a different question. The first thing we have to do
hmm.
is to find out what happened, what are the facts, what effect did they have on this community?
Right.
Let me tell you a story about reparations quickly.
Okay.
Virginia Theological Seminary has addressed that issue,
Hmm.
but it addressed it before in ways that I don't think they really appreciated. When I went to register there for class, I was late. I rushed in, and I was writing a check, and someone came up to me breathlessly and said, "Are you Riley Temple?" I said, "Yes." And they said, "You don't write that check." I said, "Oh." Did you change your mind? They said, no, you're a Bishop Payne scholar. I said, what is that? And they said, well, when we sold the assets of the Bishop Payne Divinity School,
Mm,
we put the money in a trust for the education of Black Episcopalians. You are a beneficiary of that. So you don't pay tuition. And I looked at them and I said, that's reparations. You're paid reparations. Now we have gone on to pay reparations in some other ways, but
mhm.
reparations isn't only about money.
Yep.
It's also about I'm sorry.
Hmm.
One of the things, let me tell you, an analysis that I use sometimes. Um, I've spent a lot of time with a playwright named August Wilson.
Hmm.
And August Wilson says, if you take a person and you separate him or her from everything they know, family, culture, language, whatever is identifying, you separate it from them, you have committed mayhem. The idea, it seems to me, when Moses instructs that God has told, remember who freed you with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. I take that literally. Remember meaning literally to remember people, put people back together again.
Right, right.
Fundamental humanity, which is what you are trying to do, what St. Paul's is trying to do. Because St. Paul's denied humanity. St. Philip's didn't do that. And they don't have to be a part of that analysis. First
Mm,
African didn't do
mhm.
that. It doesn't have to be a part of that analysis.
Right.
But you do. All right. Um, how did you talk to Mother Phoebe about this?
Um, I didn't, but other members of HRI did, including Wallace Adams Riley and Linda Armstrong. And I don't know who else, but other people certainly did. That was above my pay grade, as they say.
I see. And well, that may have been too bad because I think you and Phoebe would have really clicked, as it were.
Right.
She's quite capable.
Yep. When did she go to Tennessee?
I don't remember. And I have her oral history, but I can tell you this.
Right.
When she graduated from Virginia Theological Seminary, she was at the top of her class.
Mm, okay.
She had a facility for language,
Hmm.
both Greek and Hebrew, and also for the written word. So when she went to St. Philip's, I said to the people of St. Philip's, Bishop, Phoebe's going to be a bishop one day. And they looked at me and said, yeah. But I love being able to say, I told you so. Um,
I remember when uh, Wallace, our rector, left, um, and we were starting the new rector search, and it took a couple of years, but the first thing everyone said was like, "Oh, damn, we ought to get Reverend Phoebe to come over here and be our rector because she's well regarded."
and for good
And I
reason.
think people would understand the significance of that move.
Yeah.
But she
Right.
had bigger and better plans. I'm glad she's.
I think God had plans for her.
Mm,
Um, but I like the idea. Would that idea At that point, how would that, what do you think that, how do you think that idea would have come across
Which which idea?
of having a highly educated, sophisticated, intellectually astute black rector for St. Paul's?
Um, St. Paul's has okay, two things kind of in the way in your description. St. Paul's is not unfamiliar to black clergy. Um, having had at least one black deacon in the past. And then at the time that HR got underway, Melanie Mullen, of course, was an assistant
I think her
rector
forward is
there.
really lovely, by the way. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
I think her forward is really lovely, by
Oh,
the way.
great.
Yeah.
Um, and so and the the congregation, I don't want to I don't want to uh, I don't want to oversimplify a characterization of the congregation, but we're pretty liberal. And so I think we would have um, kind of worn a black rector as a badge of honor. Um, and also kind of in the and Charlie, the rector we eventually called, he's gay, he's married, and we just love that, because we're proud liberals in our church
Yeah,
practice,
yeah,
and
I got it.
we want to elevate. Um, and but also, I think Phoebe might have the way your description of her might have worked because the description of what we're looking for in a new rector,
Uh-huh.
and my wife was on the new rector search, and Mark Gordon too.
Uh-huh.
uh, was we want someone who's intellectually challenging,
Yes.
because that's kind of the and sophisticated, and that's because that's kind of the congregation we imagine ourselves to be. I
Yeah.
don't know if we
Yeah.
actually are, but we imagine ourselves to be that. And so,
Yeah.
I think if Reverend Phoebe came in and was elegant and intellectually challenging as you describe her, then I think that probably could have worked.
Um, I have always believed as a communicant of um, old established churches, both black and white,
Mhm.
that it is important to create tension intellectually.
Mhm.
Discomfort is a really wonderful thing. But most people say, oh, people will be uncomfortable. And um,
Yep.
one of the things, among the things I liked about uh, Faith, Race, and the Lost Cause were the, I won't say asides, but the historical lessons that you taught, like what was slavery like in a place like Richmond?
Mm. Okay.
The fact that most white people in Richmond did not own slaves, but leased them.
Right. And about only half of the black population in Richmond was enslaved.
Right,
So,
right. A badge of honor that I know that Black Richmond wears well and on its sleeve.
okay.
Okay. Um, Particularly at a place like St. Philip's that treasures its rarity.
Mm.
When this is recorded, that won't and transcribed, that statement will not have the snide um character to it. Well, I'll edit it out.
Right.
Um,
You could put a note in there that said interviewee chuckled at the snideness. Appropriately chuckled at the snideness.
I want to share something. One of the things I liked about it um, is how you, for those of us who knew what was, you have helped enormously in helping us to understand the evolution of white Richmond,
Mm.
of white Christian Richmond. Did you out to do that?
Um, Not intentionally.
Hmm.
And there's two things on that. One is that I realized uh, some ways into this that St. Paul's story, uh, you can repeat it, the contours of that story from slaveholding to interracial cooperation to becoming a progressive congregation, um, is something that you can repeat at every other large mainline Protestant church in Richmond.
Yeah.
So Centenary Methodist, uh, First Baptist, which isn't in downtown anymore,
Hmm.
um, the 7th Street Christian Church.
Yeah.
Um, all of these churches were involved in the same initiatives and organizations and thinking about race as a religious practice in the same ways. And I think you could say that for most mainline Protestant churches uh, that have been around since the antebellum period in most urban southern cities. Obviously, you can't say that for every church, every white church in the South, especially in the suburbs and the historically in the suburbs and rural areas. But I I I, I realized that this wasn't a story unique to St. Paul's. You could tell the same story with the other mainline white churches in downtown Richmond.
Okay, so it wasn't unique to the Episcopal Church either. Right.
I don't think so.
Right.
Now, it's very unique to the Episcopal Church. If Methodist churches and Presbyterian churches um, kind of follow the same contours in general, I can't say with much certainty, but it's possibly the case. The other thing um, is that there were just enough unexpected turns in this story um, that I can't remember the initial question that you asked that got me on that. Um,
If those other churches could or would tell the same story. Um, well, let me ask you this.
right. Okay.
I asked you over the phone, well, I suggested that this is something that has to be, what you did had to be done in the community.
Mhm.
Can you address that? How you happened upon the importance of that, and you've touched on this, of course, already.
Right.
Um, and how important and essential that was, if you think it was. In other
Yeah,
words, you didn't retire, you and Beth didn't retire to some upper room in the library of the Library of Virginia.
right. Um, it's good public history practice to always do your create your product in cooperation with your public. Um, and uh, and so, I'm thinking about who the audience is for this, and and it's the congregation of St. Paul's.
Hmm.
And at least on my end, and kind of the research and the writing and the way I was telling that story. Um, and so I spent a lot of time listening
Hmm.
to what people expected, what questions people had.
Hmm.
Um, and we started out on the research committee with about 12 volunteers who were all going to, we were all going to research different things over time. And I would direct that, but they would do the research. Now, after about 4 months, all but three of them dropped out because they realized that doing archival research for an academic history is actually
It's not
not,
sexy.
you don't think that's the best thing in the world like I do.
Well, except I think it is sexy, but go ahead.
Yeah, I do too, but most
Yeah,
people
yeah.
don't. And I acknowledge that. And so, um, and so encouraged me to do something that I think I do naturally in my public history practice is to listen a lot, but handle my subject with a great deal of empathy and care. Um, because there were certainly enough people at St. Paul's that would, basically pleaded with me to, can you just come out and say, these were racist assholes and they were wrong, right? I'm like, I don't, I mean, yeah, they were, but I don't, but I try to look into why they did the things the way they did, but also recognizing that explaining why they did the things the way they did is a way of uh, showing empathy and compassion to my fellow congregants,
And have
and
an
recognizing
appreciation
that,
for the complexity of the human condition.
yeah, 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 and but also realizing that if I just wrote a chapter that said these were all racist assholes and they were
Yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
that's also not accessible. That's going to just the way of putting that, people will go, yeah, it's true, but I've got no value
How'd you
in
get there?
being hit over the head with that.
Yeah, how they got there. It reminds me of what people, what writers, what historians say about their when they're writing biography
Mm-hmm.
and the relationship that they develop between themselves and the person whose life they are examining.
Mm-hmm.
Almost always it's sympathetic.
Right. And yeah, so I was we were conscientious throughout that our audience and our subjects were with us on a daily basis in a church. And that kind of, I wouldn't naturally say something like a firebrand, but that awareness really makes you not do that.
Well, one of the things you did early on in the book is to debunk all those theories about what people would commonly expect of white people at a St. Paul's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. St. Paul's now.
Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was very helpful. I listened not long ago to a sermon, I happened upon it, that was delivered by Andrew Terry.
Okay.
Um, and he and Melanie and I were in seminary together. They used to be a couple. I don't know if you know
I have heard that rumor.
that. I had never heard Andrew preach,
Mm.
but he was preaching at St. Paul, and it was Good Friday. It was terrific. What surprised me was that one, he was there. Uh, Two, how forthcoming he was about the challenges of being erected at a place like St. Peter's
Mm. Hmm.
and how people at St. Paul's may want to think about that. on a Good Friday. In any
Hmm.
event, all I'm saying is that it is your scholarly work um, that can be used and will pass the test of time,
So,
as will this interview. What would be your warning to a parish like St. Paul's or not that's beginning this study, this inquiry, this self-examination?
um, I could think of several minor ones. Um, in
Maybe
the
they're not
first,
minor.
oh, you gotta try to think of how to put this. Um, this could be a space of pain. It could be a space of love, and you can choose which one of those is going to be. And
Or both.
well, I mean, what I mean is,
I put words in, but no,
yeah,
forget it.
no. That's actually you said that. I'm like, oh yeah, yeah. It kind of needs to be painful. But what I mean is kind of referring back to kind of the tone of the way I write is that um, I heard grumblings uh, from a couple of people at the very beginning, and this was never a major concern or issue, but um, people saying, um, "Hey, we're just trying to make ourselves look bad in public." Um, yep.
Did you feel
And
that way?
I'm
No.
sorry.
Do you think that that's but let me ask it differently. Do you think that that's a reasonable conclusion to draw based upon your writing?
Oh no, not mine.
Right, right,
Um,
right.
but if I had done it in the tone of like, uh, look at these terrible racist assholes, aren't they the worst?
Yeah.
What good is that? It's going to give people a momentary satisfaction of going, mm-hmm, yeah, they were, but where does that? I don't know otherwise what good that does. And so I'm thinking I read some stuff by Margaret, can't remember her first name, last name, Bendroth. It's called Spirituality and the Practice of Remembering.
Oh,
I think talking about that you're doing this with everybody present, past and present. There's cloud, as she put it, there's clouds of witnesses. And and so I'm researching and writing as if these people who may have been problematic are also part of my congregation. And as you started this out by saying, we're all coming around for communion. Um, and then a great historian, Beth Barton Schweiger, uh, wrote similar things. And I can't remember the name of that essay, but it was about what is it when how do you treat your historical subjects who might have been terrible people with grace and the necessity of treating them with grace. Um, and and doing so, and this is what I think, and perhaps I'm a more subtle, perhaps I'm too subtle in my writing for this to become apparent, but um, you can explain what they did and why they did it and have that hurt your heart because we are moral human beings and we can say that was wrong. And I regret that. um, while also treating them, treating our historical subject with grace and empathy. And I don't know that I don't think that in this case we need the rhetoric of condemnation for past actions, uh, because like with all like doing history is just rehearsal for living our lives today. It's like how do you think about things? How do you treat people? How do you live in community with people? Um, in my mind, it's all, I what I like about doing history this way is that then I can go out in the world and be in communion with people in the same way, with the same grace and empathy and willingness to forgive and uh, not be a rhetorical firebomber that's gonna. But I'm not a confrontational person anyway, so.
Well, let me try something out on you. I believe in my heart of hearts that there are aspects to behavior in the most what most people would think of as someone who's a detestable person. But there are aspects of them that I see myself in.
Hmm.
No one is all bad. And even if they're bad, they're parts of the examiner that's also bad.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that's the value of having writing like yours,
Thank you.
that the reader can relate in,
Right.
not out. I'd say they, we, they, me, just it's we.
Mm-hmm.
Even the most, and over the course of my lifetime, I've worked with some rabid segregationists. I worked in the U.S. Senate, in the
Okay.
in the 70s. Um, and there are many times when we have become friends
Hmm.
despite everything else. I mean, I don't particularly like it, like it, but I can't deny it.
Hmm.
That's the gift that your writing provides.
That's what that's partially why I think chapter 3 in the book is
Yeah,
my favorite. Um, because it's the one that really gets to the heart of what I was hopefully trying to get to was that, and that's the one that covers the social gospel,
yeah.
1920s
Mhm,
and
mhm,
30s, the interracial cooperationist movement.
mhm.
Um, and also because it's the most surprising, I think it's the most surprising chapter if you think you know what this church is going into it, to have church leaders uh, devoted to um, up what was then called the uplift of the black race,
Yeah,
and was willing to work with black leaders to accomplish that.
noblesse oblige.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And they were doing things like trying to improve street uh, maintenance and city services in black neighborhoods at the time. And both rectors, Beverly Tucker and uh, Russell Bowie, um, were preaching against the Klan and racial violence from the pulpit. And and so I like that because it's surprising, and you look back and go, "Oh, wait, these are the good guys in this situation." Wasn't expecting that. But you have to hold that intention with the fact that no, they were still hardcore segregationists.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
they were trying to make, they were trying to uplift conditions in black neighborhoods, because they wanted separate to really be equal.
Yeah.
They wanted equality so it could stay separate.
Yeah.
Um, and they never got over their racial paternalism, and they never recognized that their racial paternalism was the source of the problem. And so I like kind of holding these two things in tension, saying saying that, hey, we all mean well, but we're all also probably creating harm in our actions that mean well. And how can we be vigilant and remain critical of ourselves uh, while we're still trying to do what we think is the right thing to do?
I believe Abraham Lincoln was of that mind. He knew that slavery was wrong, but he didn't believe in the equality of the races.
Nope.
And he didn't think we would ever get along. Thomas Jefferson never thought we would ever get along.
Oh yeah. No, that's at the core of pro-slavery ideology is that uh, if there's no governing disposition on the relationship between black people and white people, then we would all devolve into race war.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and well, that's been proved wrong again and again and again and again. But
Well, we have somebody now who's bringing us to test it again,
mhm,
I'm afraid.
absolutely.
At this point in the interview, and I'm not going to keep you much longer. I may want to double back with you,
All
but
right.
particularly after I speak with Beth. Is there something that you expected to be asked that I have not asked and you want to be on the record?
Um, I didn't really know what to expect out of this, is if this is going to be about the process or the history or the outcomes. So I didn't really have anything in mind. I do want to add that this was not a uh, individual research project of mine.
Hmm.
There were a lot of people involved
Hmm.
in doing the research.
Hmm.
Um, Not only Beth O'Leary, but Ann Hayes. And Ann Hayes is just a workhorse of historical research. And I would easily say that half of the evidence that was used in this book was a result of her research. Um, I couldn't have done all this on my own, but in the time it took to do it. Um, and Beth, if everything was right in the world, she should have a co-author credit on the book.
Okay.
And so this is just as much her book as it is mine, and it reflects the work of people of more than just me, particularly Ann Hayes, Ann Snyder to some extent, and Beth, and the support that uh, people in the congregation gave to end up doing it this way. So,
Among the things that I think I wanted um, to this interview to produce is to give, to take away some of the inertia of other congregations
mm,
who are facing the um, pressure and the desire to chronicle their history, their race
mm,
history, and their path toward reconciliation. You haven't said it was easy, but what you have given us is an example of how it can be done. And the intimidation factor need not be an obstacle.
right. No, this is true.
Because there's nothing
Yeah, it was.
non-intimidating about what you've done.
I'm sorry.
I assume that there was some intimidation before you got started.
Um, Not for me personally.
Okay.
Um, only that I was, conscientious of the fact that I was brand new to this congregation, and the first time most people met me was when I was announced as the research director on this project. And that's a what would you call that? A glorious burden? It was an honor to have that burden placed on my
Yeah,
shoulders.
yeah.
But I was cocky enough to not worry too hard about it. And as long as I had Beth by my side, I knew I could navigate things well enough.
And she had been steeped in the congregation, had she not, for a
Yeah,
long
she's been a member for 20 years or thereabouts.
Mhm, mhm.
So,
And that's important, isn't it? To have someone
yeah, there
who's
was
there.
yeah, there was a sorry, my dog's hacking up a hairball over there.
Yeah, I know. I know.
In fact, I'm keep talking. I'm gonna see if I can get her to go outside real quick. The door's right here. Um,
Well, I've had my dog in hand to keep him calm.
yeah. Um, yeah, what was interesting to me was that um, in that regard is that people who had uh, people who had grown up in this congregation participated, and the fact that we were doing this brought in new people so that they could participate
Oh,
with this. And so there was and so it was rather affirming that kind of uh, one of the more venerable matriarchs of a family who has deep, deep and towering roots in this church was one of the people that voted to remove all the plaques from the sanctuary. All of them, not just the Confederate and Lost Cause ones, but all of them. Um, and so it was a remarkable moment in my book. I mean, I don't know if it was in my book, but for me, it was a remarkable moment seeing that. If anyone had grounds to say, this is my family history and you're messing with it, it was her. And she didn't. So,
well, as I did not believe that those monuments on Monument Avenue should have been removed without first teaching about them.
mhm,
People remove them and they don't know anything about what is behind them
right.
other than what they see today and hear
Yep.
today.
Yep. Well, it's funny you say that because I started out that way
Yes.
and I got to know them and and it was because I began to have a deeper understanding of what their intentions were.
Yeah.
It's what brought me around to saying, yeah, they should probably be removed. So I think a more solid education on those things, and we didn't really get one, would have produced the same result.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have any question about that.
Yeah.
But I do think that we are so in this country so ignorant of our history,
Hmm.
that to have a convenient and accessible focal point is an important thing, convenient thing.
Hmm.
That's all.
Yep.
All right. I will let you go. Thank you so much. What we will do is I'm sending this off to be transcribed,
Okay.
and I will send you the transcription will be the official record, the
Right.
permanent record, not the video. But what we do is that I have someone watch this video to make sure that the transcription reflects accurately what we said.
Okay. Well, my message then is hello to the person checking the accuracy of the transcription. I know it's tedious work as a historian, You're doing the Lord's work, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
This is you're critical in this process. So
Yeah.
thank you, whoever you are.
And thank you, Chris. And I hope you don't mind if I double back with you with with questions or maybe even a few more minutes because I know I've gone over
Yeah,
my
not
time.
at all. Not at all. I enjoyed this conversation.
Okay, good, good, good. All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.